XRP versus SWIFT, old rails versus new rails. For over 50 years, the backbone of international payments has been SWIFT, the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunications. With over 11,000 financial institutions in more than 200 countries, SWIFT is the undisputed standard for cross-border messaging. When a bank in New York sends money to a bank in Tokyo, chances are that transaction runs on SWIFT rails. It is the plumbing of global finance. But here's the truth. SWIFT was built for a different era. At its core, SWIFT is not a payment system. It is a messaging network. Banks send instructions to each other, but the actual money movement happens later. Through pre-funded nostro-vostro accounts, correspondent banks, and settlement processes that can take days. For the average business or consumer, that means waiting, paying high fees, and enduring inefficiency that feels archaic in the digital age. Enter XRP. From day one, XRP was designed not as a messaging system, but as a settlement layer. Transactions settle in 3.5 seconds. Fees are fractions of a penny. There is no need for pre-funded accounts. Capital can move in real time. RippleNet's on-demand liquidity powered by XRP is the opposite of SWIFT's model. Where SWIFT locks money in dormant accounts across the world, XRP frees it to move instantly. The contrast could not be sharper. SWIFT. Delayed, fragmented, and dependent on trust between intermediaries. XRP. Instant, global, and secured by cryptographic consensus. Yet this is not just a story of speed and cost. It is a story of old rails versus new rails. SWIFT represents the 20th century model, centralized, controlled, and political. XRP represents the 21st century, decentralized, neutral, and programmable. One is a relic of the analog era. The other is the infrastructure of the digital era. But the battle is not simply technical. SWIFT is deeply entrenched, backed by powerful banks and governments. It has brand recognition, regulatory trust, and institutional inertia on its side. XRP, despite its superiority, must fight uphill against incumbents who benefit from the inefficiencies of the old system. This is not just a technological shift. It is a geopolitical struggle. This documentary will explore the history of SWIFT and how it came to dominate global payments, the inefficiencies of the SWIFT model and why they are unsustainable in a digital-first economy, how XRP offers not just an alternative, but a complete replacement for settlement itself, the battle between incumbents defending the old rails and innovators building the new ones, and the future. Will XRP quietly replace SWIFT as the invisible backbone of global finance, or will the old rails adapt to survive? The stakes could not be higher. This is not just a story of banks and blockchains. It is the story of whether the future of money will be built on outdated messaging systems or on real-time settlement rails that make global value as fluid as information. This is XRP versus SWIFT, old rails versus new rails. Part 1. The rise of SWIFT and the old financial order. To understand why XRP poses such a profound challenge, we first need to understand the empire it is up against. SWIFT. The Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunications was founded in 1973, born out of necessity. Banks around the world needed a standardized, secure way to communicate payment instructions. Before SWIFT, cross-border payments relied on telex machines, slow, error-prone, and vulnerable to fraud. SWIFT solved this problem by creating a unified messaging language for finance. By the 1980s, SWIFT had become the dominant network for cross-border financial messaging. Its codes and standards created a universal language that allowed banks from Tokyo to New York, London to Sao Paulo, to speak to one another. Over time, SWIFT expanded to thousands of members, cementing its place as the backbone of international payments. But here's the critical distinction. SWIFT is not a payment system. It does not move money, it moves messages. When Bank A in the US wants to send $10 million to Bank B in Germany, it sends a SWIFT message. That message instructs a series of correspondent banks, intermediaries holding accounts with one another, to move funds through the chain. Settlement can take days, requires multiple hops, and often involves hidden fees at each stop. This is the world of nostro-vostro accounts. To ensure payments can be made quickly, banks pre-fund accounts in foreign countries with billions of dollars. These pools of dormant money sit idle, waiting to be tapped when needed. 'The cost of maintaining these accounts is staggering, locking up trillions globally. The cost of maintaining these accounts is staggering, locking up trillions globally. The cost of maintaining these accounts is staggering, locking up trillions globally. The cost of maintaining these accounts is staggering, locking up trillions globally. The cost of maintaining these accounts is staggering, locking up trillions globally. The cost of maintaining these accounts is staggering, locking up trillions globally. The cost of maintaining these accounts is staggering, locking up trillions globally. The cost of maintaining these accounts is staggering, locking up trillions globally. The cost of maintaining these accounts is staggering, locking up trillions globally. The cost of maintaining these accounts is staggering, locking up trillions globally. The cost of maintaining these accounts is staggering, locking up trillions globally. The cost of maintaining these accounts is staggering, locking up trillions globally. The cost of maint Yet this inefficiency persists because it is the only way to keep the SWIFT model functional. The system worked well enough in the 20th century, when trade volumes were smaller and digital alternatives didn't exist. But today, the cracks are obvious. Transactions can take 2 to 5 days. Fees range from $10 to $50 per payment, often higher. Transparency is limited. Customers often don't know where their money is or when it will arrive. Trillions remain trapped in dormant accounts. Despite these flaws, SWIFT remains deeply entrenched. With over 11,000 members in more than 200 countries, it has become the global standard. Governments rely on it for sanction enforcement. Banks depend on it for connectivity. It is not just a network, it is a power structure. But herein lies the problem. SWIFT was designed in an analog era. It is a relic of a time when information traveled slowly and intermediaries were unavoidable. In the digital age, where emails arrive instantly and value moves across blockchain networks in seconds, SWIFT feels out of place. It is the financial equivalent of sending a letter by horse-drawn carriage in the age of the internet. And this is exactly why the system is vulnerable. Every empire eventually faces a challenger. SWIFT has had a long run as the king of cross-border payments, but its inefficiencies, reliance on intermediaries, and outdated design leave it exposed. The question is, what will replace it? Enter XRP. While SWIFT built a messaging empire, XRP was designed as a settlement layer. It doesn't send instructions, it settles value directly. In the clash between SWIFT's old rails and XRP's new rails, the very foundation of global finance is at stake. Part 2. The inefficiencies of SWIFT in a digital age. For decades, SWIFT's flaws were tolerated because there was no better option. But in the 21st century, an era defined by instant communication, digital commerce, and global interconnectedness, those flaws have become glaring inefficiencies that choke economic growth. The most obvious problem is speed. In a world where messages, photos, and even billion-dollar trades can move instantly online, cross-border payments on SWIFT still take 2 to 5 business days. For individuals sending remittances, that delay can mean families waiting for food or medicine. For corporations managing supply chains, it means uncertainty, risk, and stalled operations. Time is money, and SWIFT wastes both. Then there's cost. Each SWIFT transfer can cost anywhere from $10 to $50 in fees, often with additional charges hidden by intermediary banks along the chain. These fees might seem trivial on a one-time payment, but on the trillions flowing across borders every day, they add up to billions lost annually. For small businesses and migrant workers, the costs are devastating. Another critical flaw is transparency. When money is sent via SWIFT, neither the sender nor the recipient truly knows where the funds are at any given moment. Payments vanish into a black box of correspondent banks, sometimes reappearing days later, sometimes rejected altogether due to compliance errors. In an age where real-time tracking is expected in everything from pizza deliveries to international shipping, waiting blindly for money to arrive is absurd. Perhaps the most damaging inefficiency is trapped liquidity. To grease the wheels of the SWIFT model, banks pre-fund trillions of dollars in nostro vostro accounts around the world. These funds sit idle, earning little to no return, simply waiting to be used for settlement. For global banks, this is a massive drag on capital efficiency. For developing economies, it is even worse, locking away capital that could otherwise build infrastructure, fund businesses, or lift communities out of poverty. Beyond economics, SWIFT is also politically weaponized. The US and its allies frequently use access to SWIFT as leverage in enforcing sanctions. While effective for geopolitics, this erodes trust in SWIFT's neutrality. Nations seeking independence from dollar hegemony, from Russia to China to the BRICS alliance, are actively exploring alternatives, further exposing the fragility of a system once considered untouchable. And then there is innovation. SWIFT was not built to integrate with tokenized assets, CBDCs, or blockchain-based finance. While it has made attempts to adapt, experimenting with ISO 2022 messaging and tokenization pilots, it remains a messaging system layered on outdated infrastructure. Trying to retrofit SWIFT for the digital age is like bolting rockets onto a horse-drawn carriage. The bottom line, SWIFT's inefficiencies aren't just inconveniences, they are systemic weaknesses. They slow economies, raise costs, erode trust, and exclude billions of people who cannot afford its fees or tolerate its delays. In an age where the financial system must be instant, interoperable, and inclusive, Swift's model looks increasingly unsustainable. And that opens the door for challengers built for the digital era. This is the world XRP was designed for. Where Swift locks up capital, XRP frees it. Where Swift relies on intermediaries, XRP eliminates them. Where Swift sends messages, XRP settles value. The clash between these two systems is not just about technology. It is about the future of money itself. Part 3. XRP and the new settlement layer. If Swift is a messenger of instructions, XRP is the rail of settlement. That difference, subtle on the surface, is revolutionary in practice. Where Swift sends payment orders that crawl through chains of banks, XRP settles value directly in seconds, removing the intermediaries that make legacy finance slow, expensive, and opaque. At its core, XRP is a digital asset built for payments. Its ledger finalizes transactions in 3-5 seconds. Fees are measured in fractions of a penny. Unlike Bitcoin, it doesn't consume massive energy. And unlike Ethereum, it isn't bogged down by general-purpose complexity. Its singular purpose is liquidity and settlement, the exact area where Swift shows its age. RippleNet, powered by XRP's on-demand liquidity, ODL, flips the Swift model upside down. Instead of pre-funding Nostro Vostro accounts, institutions can use XRP as a bridge currency. For example, a bank in Mexico can send pesos, which convert to XRP, move instantly across the ledger, and then convert into Philippine pesos on the other side, all without holding dormant capital abroad. The process is near instant, transparent, and eliminates layers of cost. This model solves the trapped liquidity problem that drains trillions from global trade. Freed capital can be reinvested into business, infrastructure, and growth, rather than idling in foreign accounts. For developing economies, it could mean unlocking resources that today sit useless in correspondent banking networks. For global giants, it means lower costs and leaner balance sheets. The advantages go beyond efficiency. Transparency is built into XRP's design. Every transaction is visible, traceable, and final. There is no black hole of payments disappearing into correspondent chains. The sender and receiver know where funds are and when they arrive. Certainty that Swift can't deliver. XRP also offers neutrality. Swift, while global, is tied to geopolitics. It is dominated by Western banks and often used as a political weapon through sanctions. In contrast, XRP is not issued by any one government. Its open-source ledger and decentralized nature make it a neutral bridge, one that any currency, CBDC, or tokenized asset can settle through. In an era where multipolar politics are rising, neutrality is not a luxury, it is essential. Critically, XRP is future-proof. While Swift struggles to adapt to tokenization and CBDCs, XRP was built with interoperability in mind. Any asset that can be tokenized can be moved across its ledger, from stablecoins to central bank digital currencies. This means XRP isn't just competing with Swift on today's terms, it is already prepared for tomorrow's financial system. Skeptics argue that Swift's entrenched position makes it untouchable, but history shows us otherwise. Once dominant systems, from the telegraph to Kodak, from Blockbuster to BlackBerry, fell to new technologies that delivered what the old could not. Efficiency, speed, and scalability always win in the end. The financial system is no different. XRP doesn't need to topple Swift overnight. It only needs to prove itself in corridor after corridor, building liquidity, gaining trust, and embedding itself into the plumbing of finance. Slowly, the momentum shifts. Where Swift requires trust in intermediaries, XRP builds trust through code and finality. The choice is becoming clearer. Old rails that move instructions slowly, or new rails that settle value instantly. This isn't just about banks saving money. It's about building a financial system that matches the digital age. A system where money moves like information. A system where efficiency isn't a privilege but the default. That system is not theoretical. It exists today and it runs on XRP. Part 4. The battle between old rails and new rails. Every major technological shift comes with resistance. Incumbents cling to their power, leveraging networks, regulation, and trust built over decades. Swift is no different. Even as blockchain technologies like XRP threaten its model, Swift has not stood still. It is fighting to adapt, to evolve just enough to survive and to convince the world that its legacy rails still matter. In recent years, Swift has launched projects like Swift GPI, Global Payments Innovation. This initiative sought to improve transparency and speed, allowing banks to track payments in real time. While GPI shaved some inefficiencies off the old model, it remained bound to SWIFT's fundamental flaw. It is still a messaging system. Payments may move faster on the surface, but settlement remains slow, reliant on correspondent banks and trapped liquidity. SWIFT has also experimented with CBDC interoperability. In 2022 and 2023, it ran pilots connecting multiple central bank digital currencies across different systems. The results showed progress. CBDCs could, in theory, interoperate through SWIFT messaging. But here again, the limitation is clear. SWIFT is trying to retrofit a 20th century model onto 21st century money. It can transmit instructions, but it cannot replace the need for pre-funded accounts or deliver true instant settlement. Meanwhile, XRP doesn't just talk about interoperability. It is interoperability. As a neutral bridge asset, XRP eliminates the need for intermediaries altogether. Where SWIFT patches inefficiencies with new messaging layers, XRP rebuilds the system from the ground up with a settlement-first design. This is the heart of the battle: incremental reform versus radical innovation. SWIFT hopes small improvements will maintain its dominance. XRP demonstrates that an entirely new model can render SWIFT obsolete. The clash is not only about technology, but also about institutional inertia. Banks, regulators, and governments have decades invested in SWIFT. Shifting to XRP requires overcoming politics, compliance hurdles, and entrenched habits. There is also a geopolitical dimension. SWIFT is not neutral. Its dominance has allowed Western powers, especially the United States, to wield sanctions as financial weapons. Nations targeted by sanctions, Russia, Iran, and others, have sought alternatives precisely because SWIFT is not impartial. For them, XRP's neutrality is attractive, but for those who benefit from SWIFT's politicization, XRP is a threat. The battle is also one of public perception. SWIFT is seen as trusted, regulated, and established. Crypto assets like XRP still battle reputational baggage, volatility, regulatory disputes, and associations with speculation. To institutions, adopting XRP requires not just technical validation, but cultural acceptance. Ripple's partnerships with banks, payment providers, and even central banks are key in this fight, slowly changing the narrative from crypto gamble to financial infrastructure. And yet history suggests the outcome is inevitable. When a new technology is orders of magnitude faster, cheaper, and more efficient, adoption may be resisted, but it cannot be stopped. The printing press replaced scribes. The internet replaced letters. Streaming replaced DVDs. Efficiency always wins, it is only a matter of when. The old rails are entrenched, defended, and politically powerful. But the new rails are inevitable, adaptable, and already proving themselves in live corridors. This is not a question of if, but when. In this battle, SWIFT represents the past. XRP represents the future. And while incumbents may delay change, they cannot prevent it forever. Part 5, the future of settlement. Will XRP replace SWIFT? The question is no longer whether SWIFT is outdated. The cracks in its model are too deep, the inefficiencies too obvious. The question now is whether XRP will replace it outright, complement it as a parallel system, or quietly run beneath the surface as the true rail of global settlement. One possible future is coexistence. In this scenario, SWIFT continues to modernize with incremental upgrades, keeping banks comfortable while XRP powers corridors where speed and liquidity matter most. Over time, more institutions experiment with RippleNet and on-demand liquidity. At first, XRP doesn't replace SWIFT, it supplements it. Like the early days of the internet coexisting with fax machines, the two systems overlap until the new proves so efficient that it quietly takes over. Another future is replacement. In this path, XRP becomes the backbone of cross-border settlement. As CBDCs launch and tokenization expands, the inefficiencies of SWIFT become untenable. Banks no longer tolerate idle trillions in nostro vostro accounts. Regulators recognize XRP's neutrality and efficiency, giving green lights for adoption. SWIFT fades into obsolescence, a relic of the pre-digital age, remembered as the fax machine of payments. There's also a hybrid future. Here, SWIFT adapts by integrating directly with blockchain settlement layers, including XRP. In this outcome, SWIFT survives not as the engine of payments, but as a messaging and compliance layer, while true settlement shifts to decentralized assets. SWIFT keeps its brand recognition and political clout, but XRP becomes the invisible force that actually moves value. Of course, there are risks. Adoption may be slowed by regulatory battles, geopolitical tensions, or simple institutional inertia. SWIFT's deep roots in the global system make it difficult to dislodge quickly. XRP may need to prove itself in corridor after corridor before it earns universal trust, but history suggests that once a tipping point is reached, change accelerates rapidly. The future is also shaped by macro events. A global financial crisis, a major banking collapse, or a sanctions backlash could accelerate adoption of neutral settlement assets. If a critical mass of nations and institutions decide SWIFT no longer serves their needs, the shift to alternatives like XRP could happen in months, not years. At the heart of this debate lies one truth: money must move at the speed of information. The digital economy cannot function with analog payment rails. Just as the internet demanded broadband and smartphones, the new financial system demands instant, borderless settlement. XRP is engineered to provide exactly that. So will XRP replace SWIFT? The answer may be less dramatic than a headline moment and more subtle, almost invisible. One day, banks may still send SWIFT messages, but beneath the surface, settlement happens in seconds through XRP. The old brand remains, but the new rail does the work. Much like most people don't know their internet runs on TCP/IP, the world may never realize they are transacting through XRP every day. That may in fact be XRP's destiny, not as the flashy destroyer of SWIFT, but as the quiet backbone of global commerce. A bridge so seamless that the world forgets it's there, and because everything just works. And when historians look back on the shift from old rails to new, they may not remember the incremental reforms of SWIFT. They may remember the neutral asset that replaced messages with settlement. The moment when finance finally caught up with the digital age. That moment may well belong to XRP. Closing XRP versus SWIFT, old rails versus new rails. For half a century, SWIFT has been the backbone of global payments. But in a digital age where money must move as fast as information, messaging is no longer enough. Settlement is the future. That's where XRP comes in. A neutral bridge asset designed to move value instantly, transparently, and without borders. While SWIFT patches its old system with upgrades, XRP rewrites the rules entirely. This isn't just competition between two technologies. It's a battle between old rails and new rails, between the analog past and the digital future. The outcome won't be decided overnight, but history shows that efficiency always wins. And XRP may quietly become the invisible backbone of global commerce, the settlement layer that finally replaces SWIFT's outdated plumbing. If you found this documentary insightful, make sure to subscribe to LTL Productions for more deep dives into XRP, the Internet of Value, and the future of money. The rails of global finance are being rebuilt right now. Don't just watch the change, be part of it.